So, I want to tell you about my interest in exploring ongoing learning in high schools and universities. Initially, I designed research-based sociology learning activities for high school students. And one of the activities was to train students to make observations in order to be able to recognize environmental characteristics. Then, this activity was continued and learning was devoted to students, participants in the Introduction to Anthropology course. The topic raised is human civilization. To equip students and university students with learning, I fly drones to carry out several mapping activities using a lot of technological equipment. For example, sensor technology for mapping. Then, I observed some changes in the Earth, and it was done from ancient maps and Google Earth Pro. Apart from that, I also read references related to geology, especially the thoughts of Reinout Willem van Bemmelen in his book entitled General Geology of Indonesia and Adjacent Archipelagos. Van Bemmelen's reference was in the form of his research book, which I first read while studying at SWCU in 2000 and continued in 2002. It took me about 2 years, and that was a very long time. This is because I have to look for supporting references and those supporting references, helping me to understand more quickly every presentation from Van Bemmelen. Then, I also had conversations in the nature of consultations with several lecturers in the fields of geology, geophysics, geography, ecology and anthropology, and sociology. So it took a long time to understand at least the most important parts of Van Bemmelen's research publications. The interesting part is that it is endogenous. Why do I pay attention to endogenous? Before I took my undergraduate degree in 2000, when I was still in high school, I wondered why the Aborigines have something in common with the Papuans. How did early humans spread and evolve with their species development, so that their fossils can be found in various parts of the world? Meanwhile, don't we know that waters such as oceans, seas, are more dominant than land? Even if ancient humans were desperate to cross, then there was definitely no development of the ancient human species, because they died because of the extreme waves in the ocean and the food supply was insufficient. Not to mention the ability of ancient humans to think, to create the best technology that can be used to cross or conquer the oceans is still considered limited. Plus, wild animals in the water that certainly don't look like the results of their evolution in the current era. Of course, wild animals in the water are like scary monsters. It's like we're watching ancient humans fight against water monsters like the Godzilla movie. So, you can understand the importance of this study to find out how everything that exists today came to be. And for me, this is the most important and useful knowledge for us. Introduce study. The study was conducted in 2 places, cultural heritage, in the form of caves in Poso Regency, Pomona Cave and Tangkaboba Cave. These 2 caves are different, but they have something in common, namely the types of rocks, as well as their ecosystem. Tangkaboba Cave actually does not deserve to be called a cave, because generally people understand the cave is a large hollow rock and can be entered. But the Tangkaboba Cave itself is nothing more than a boulder, and it looks like a large rock fracture, and doesn't have a large cavity. Different from Pomona Cave has a cavity, so it can be entered even though the current condition is to enter there. We have to bend down because there is a narrowing due to the growing stone. The rocks and their ecosystem, both in Tangkaboba Cave and Pomona Cave, are what got me interested, and started to develop my thoughts about caves, and this is where I started. Prior to that, this activity was content in the form of learning videos which were uploaded on Villager Sociology YouTube channel. And now, I want to upload it on this channel, and it's only for the public.
Untuk spesimen ini, kerang ini tidak ada di daerah-daerah ekosistem darat, tapi ini ada dari.
From several references, Lake Poso is said to have been formed due to tectonics and volcanoes. This is the most important part, and from here we're going to learn how all of that was formed, as well as what it was endogenous in relation to the formation of the Earth's surface, long before the Earth decided to hibernate. Previously, I took several samples of types of rocks and shells. The location is still part of the cave ecosystem, and I was on the outskirts of the lake, to the right of Gua Pomona. In this area, I noticed rocks and shell fossils. Some other areas to pay attention to are the sand around the lake, either in the water or on the edge of the lake water. On the sand that is not in the water, lots of shells and other types of living creatures in lake habitats, generally dead, and it is very clear that some of them have turned into fossils, including fossilized shells. Now, my younger brother and I enter the cave area. We are currently at the Cave Cultural Reserve State Protected Site. There is a lot of green moss here, and it is not far from where we are active. I see clearly some trees, their roots and stems have wrapped around the rock in the cave ecosystem area. The impression was that the tree had merged with the rock. But why is it still able to grow until it becomes a big tree with roots, and the trunk is wrapped around the rock? I started the work of identifying one by one. The first activity is to identify the rocks, and the second activity is to identify the content elements in the rocks. This activity was carried out so that I could find out what the conditions were like before, and find out whether the formation of Lake Poso is closely related to the cave ecosystem, especially the effects that arise. From several assessments, this cave ecosystem is an ancient forest, and this is the remnant of an endogenous event that took place in the prehistoric era. Here, I haven't found any indication that this cave has accurate information to provide clues regarding ancient humans from the prehistoric era, such as Homo sapiens or other ancient human species. I didn't get any clues about this cave ecosystem, Gua Pomona, at all. Regarding the rocks, the Pomona cave ecosystem gives us clues about the types of rocks that exist in this ecosystem. First, the types of rocks that are similar to the rocks used as ornaments in the aquarium. This type of rock can be found on the beach or sea. It's just that there are some interesting shapes from the first type of rock. For example, the type of rock is hollow, and the hollow pattern is the same as igneous rocks formed by lava from volcanic events. It is possible that, when endogenous, tectonic movements push lava to vomit, and at the same time volcanic seismic events occur from the bottom of the Earth. The process takes place at the bottom of the Earth, pushing the water from inside the Earth out, and the lava hits the water. Meanwhile, parts of the Earth's surface slowly disappeared until there was no more land. rocky valleys and surrounding forests also entered the bottom of the earth. This process is called endogenous, the loss of the Earth's surface. Second, the types of rocks that already exist or the types of rocks are not from igneous rocks, but rocks that are typical with mountains or rock valleys. This type of rock is almost the same as the first type of rock, but slightly different in texture. There are several stones that were found to be hollow, but it is likely that they were formed due to exposure to lava on the surface of the rock, both the top, left and right sides. Third, the types of rocks that come from the bottom of the earth. This type of rock appears on the surface along with endogenous processes. The strength of the earth drives the formation of rocks that are similar to igneous rocks. But these types of rocks are also included in the category of igneous rocks and are not the same as hollow rocks that are similar to coral reefs. The lava flow might hit the rock wall that was just formed by nature, so that cavities were formed, and the cavities were very large, so it was easy for people to enter. Water that has just come out of the bottom of the earth also forms and cools the lava. So the result is that the surface layer texture of the cave looks interesting because there is a combination of rock types. Both igneous rocks, typical mountain rocks, and rocks formed from the bottom of the earth. From this thought, I tested the rocks in the Pomona cave ecosystem. The results were fantastic. The stones contain copper, or there are mineral elements contained in it. And this is characteristic of several types of rocks in the cave ecosystem and cave walls. Up to the floor part of the cave ecosystem outside the cave. If this is indeed true, then I should test the content. But before that, I need to check the rocks in the cave ecosystem, and now I'm in the Pomona cave area. I then used several lenses to get a detailed picture. I do this before using a sensor to detect the content in the rocks, while at the same time ensuring that the rocks are generally more dominant combination rocks, the third type of rock that I have mentioned. We pause for a moment, pay attention to all the trees or the cave area. It seems that we are in an ancient forest. Several types of trees, and including the types of grass or vegetation present, all come from the same habitat, the forest. And again, this is ancient forest. The Pomona tribe used to know a place called Tanki. The tank is an animal grazing area, animals that are hunted. There the animals were kept, and these animals were kept for eating. Some were kept to be used as valuable assets. Assets for marriage, as one of the assets used to fulfill customary requirements in order to get a woman to marry. After the Dutch period and the transition of Japanese colonial rule, the Tanki area was later renamed the Bazooka. This is the historical story of Pomona village, one of the administrative areas of Pomona Pusalemba district in Poso Regency, Central Sulawesi. The most important question here, where did they get the animal from? Don't these animals come from certain habitats, for example in the forest? And one of the areas close to the Tanki is Pomona Cave. This is a forest ecosystem before experiencing endogenous. The tradition of herding game animals is a tradition that has existed since the transitional era, the prehistoric era to history. The time span is quite unique for the survival of people's social behavior from the transformation of the era. After Pomona Cave was formed, this cave had another function, no different from the Tangkaboba Cave. Here, a place to store bodies until they become bones. They believe that this way can integrate the spirit with nature, distinguish the habitat of living humans and dead humans, as well as play a role in protecting the main habitat of their historical development. Shortly, Gua Pomona is an ancient grave. That's one conclusion from the linkage of this search. On the other side of the cave ecosystem, in the terrace of the cave, there we can find trees with roots that have attached to several large rocks, and their trunks are very close to the surface of the rock. When I observed the growth and development of the trees, it seemed that the main tree had rotted away and was in the midst of new trees, the saplings. This site is simply magnificent. Then I found several types of leaves, and most of them are types of plants that come from the forest. Judging from the ancient forest ecosystem, Gua Pomona and its relation to Tanki illustrates the social behavior of the Pomona people, for example related to one of the children of the Pomona tribe, Winkemposo. They are one of the children of the tribe with a sedentary settlement pattern, moving from one place to another place, from one mountain to another. The mountains are the residential area chosen by the Pomona tribe. The most important question, and has a close relationship with the loss of the Earth's surface from natural processes which are called endogenous, lies in the reason the Pomona tribe chose the mountains as a residential area, and they always move from one mountain to another. The Pomona tribe has at least gone through two important eras to show the existence of endogenous-related natural disasters in relation to the formation of the Earth's surface. The first era is the prehistoric era, and the second era is the historical era. In the prehistoric era, the social behavior of the settlement pattern was not permanent or nomadic. It still continued in the historical era. It's just that the difference lies in the change in settlement concentration. In the prehistoric era, the Pomona tribe still moved from one mountain to another. Whereas in the historical era, the Pomona tribe chose the lakeside area and their settlement was still nomadic. The Pomona tribe, which is in a transitional period, prehistoric and historical eras, chose cave locations as the graves of their loved ones. Locations of ancient cemeteries such as the Tangkaboba Cave are very close to the ancient settlements of the Pomona tribe. For example, the Langadopi people, one of the ethnic groups. The same thing applies to Gua Pomona. This cave is used as a place to bury loved ones. The Pomona people are not used to burying their bodies. They prefer to store their bodies, and from the trips we made to two places, Tangkaboba Cave and Pomona Cave, there was not a single indication of a preservation process. All that was found was a pile of neatly arranged skulls. In Pomona Cave and Tangkaboba Cave, several chests were still found where skulls were placed. It's just that the chests were not made in the prehistoric era, but were made in the historical era, and this can be seen from the shape of the carvings or the shape of the skull crates. We return to major events, natural disasters that arise as a result of endogenous and other secondary events such as changes in weather and climate that affect soil quality and give rise to various chronic diseases. Important information I obtained in January 2011 stated that around 1600 to 1940, several tribal groups took the initiative to seek their god, Mpu Mpalaburu. The purpose of seeking the gods is to complain about their fate and the various events that befell them, natural disasters, pestilence and famine. They finally made an ancient road, this road connecting central Sulawesi and South Sulawesi. And finally they met Datu Luwu, the king of the kingdom of Luwu. The king's charisma and performance, according to them, is like the figure of the god they have been looking for. The cult process ensued. Then some of the Pomona ethnic groups chose to settle in the border areas, South Sulawesi and Central Sulawesi. From this information, it indicates that the problems faced by the Pomona tribe are very difficult, or it can be said that the problems they face are very heavy. And general problems stem from endogenous events that befell the Pomona tribe. The population of the Pomona tribe is relatively small. This is an indication that the Pomona tribe has experienced the biggest natural disasters, endogenous events. The Pomona tribe as a resident of Central Sulawesi has a unique history, and this determines the formation of the social and cultural character of the Pomona tribe, one of the tribes in Central Sulawesi. In the search, at least the people of Central Sulawesi came from Japanese migration through the north along the Tamaini Bay, bringing with them the megalithic culture of the Destinhouwers or stone-breaking groups. Their remains are in the form of statues, menhirs, kalimba. Kroot added that the second migration, the megalithic De Pottenbakkers or group of potters, entered via the west, along the Gulf of Bone and then to Central Sulawesi. Migrant Pottenbakkers inherited distinctive forms of social stratification, such as nobility and slaves, as well as ritual patterns of worship of something occult, the Lamoan religion. At several points, the surrounding Tentina region has the characteristics of vast land and layers of soil where there are several types of rocks, and these types of rocks are generally characteristic of mountainous areas or rocky valleys. Traditional religion and social ecosystems are united so strongly and have a major influence on people's perceptions, the way people view their existence with their surroundings, and respond to various things and produce certain experiences into a story, then all of it is passed on from generation to generation. In this ecosystem, the Gua Pomona ecosystem, I feel like I'm in a former ancient forest, while standing on top of mountains and rocky valleys with a few rocks. After seeing the walls of the cave, the exterior courtyard of the cave and the area around the cave, rocks such as hollow stones and types of rocks resulting from a mixture of rocks from the bottom of the earth and rocks formed due to lava from volcanic processes that the Pomona tribe experienced in prehistoric times, this is a basic clue to the pattern settlements in historical eras. From research I conducted a few years ago, the pattern of community settlement is divided according to the number of units, and this applies equally within the Pomona ethnic group. The settlement pattern in the Pomona tribe according to the number of units or grouped according to size consists of 3 settlement parts, namely Dodaha, Boya and Lipu. In this content, you are watching the process of identifying rock elements from the outer wall of a cave. From the scanning results, the data shows that the stone elements of the outer wall of the cave contain metal, or the stone wall of the cave contains iron. These rocks, or rather this cave, are the result of endogenous formations. When there is movement and earthquakes in the Earth's plates, these rocks appear on the surface, and the earthquake and lava and water that come out of the bottom of the Earth hit hard on the rocks that have just appeared, so that the process forms a large cavity, making a way in, to be precise, the waterway. Some splashes of lava, forming a surface layer of rock that comes from the bottom of the earth. So the impression when you see the rocks around the cave, or the walls of the cave on the outside and or inside the cave, we can liken it to adhesive. This also occurs in the formation of rock textures overgrown with trees. What a contrast! This is purely a natural cave and not an artificial cave. After I scanned the upper terrace area of Pomona Cave, I continued working on the other side, the lower part of the left side of the cave wall. On the way to the bottom, I feel like I just went down the mountain. This feeling is quite basic if I pay attention to the foot of the cave that goes down to the bottom of the lake. Here, I build a hypothesis. If it is associated with endogenous, then this part of the ancient mountain has entered the bottom of the earth. In the past, this ancient mountain, Gua Pomona, was probably a big mountain. This can be seen from the strong structure of the soil and rocks to accommodate large trees, some of which are still well-preserved ancient trees. Meanwhile, other rocks from the bottom of the earth, popping up and hitting parts of Mount Purba, were the source of food for the Pomona tribe in the ancient era. At the bottom, the cliffs of Pomona Cave's outer wall resemble a fence, and there are several naturally formed gaps. These gaps can be used to explore other parts under the cave. It feels like walking down the mountain. The hypothesis that I developed is that Pomona Cave is a rock mountain that is not hollow, then has cavities due to endogenous influences. The cavities are open due to vibrations and friction of the Earth's plates. The Earth then lifts other types of rocks from the bottom of the Earth. Not surprisingly, almost all the rocks around the cave ecosystem contain metal or copper and or iron. This is a great work, Lord. If you have ever taken a walk and entered a cave, you will see lots of protruding layered rocks that are sharp at the top. There are also rocks from above that taper below. Both of them make the cave a beautiful photo object. One is called a stalagmite, and the other is called a stalactite. Do you know how stalagmites and stalactites are formed? The shape of the stalagmite is different. There are wide, short, tall, thin, and also towering like a tower. Its shape is determined by the rate of dripping water in tropical areas that have high levels of carbon dioxide and in dry areas, so that the deposition can be accelerated by evaporation. Stalactite comes from the Greek word which means dripping. If rock stalagmites are sharp with the ends pointing up, stalactites are rocks that are sharp and have sharp holes with the ends pointing down. Stalactites are formed from precipitated calcium carbonate and other minerals, which are precipitated in mineral water solutions. Quoted in Encyclopedia Britannica, 2015, stalactites and stalagmites are elongated in shape. The shape is obtained from various minerals precipitated from solution with slowly dripping water. Stalactites like icicles from the ceiling or sides of a cave. Meanwhile, stalagmites look like stalactites upside down, rising from the floor of a cave. Stalagmites have thicker proportions and grow at the bottom of the cave from the same water source. Minerals that are deposited after water droplets fall across open spaces in the rock. Not all stalactites are paired with stalagmites. Many of the stalagmites do not have stalactites on them. Then, what if the two of them grow and meet at the same point? Later, they will form columns or pillars.